And hello again from WJ Live. I'm Josh Manning, Deputy Managing Editor for Assignment at The Western Journal. Joining me, Michael Austin, reporter for The Western Journal, and Jonah, whose name I never get right, the intern, joining us from the intern pool. Jonah, welcome.
Thank you, Josh.
Happy to all you viewers out there. Happy day by which the states Texas is suing have to respond, according to the Supreme Court. We're going to get to that here in just a moment. But first off, we've got some budget talks, and our friend Andy Biggs, we're based here in Arizona. Andy Biggs is in the news,
Yes.
talking about the budget, talking about vetoes, talking about Trump. Jonah, bring us up to date on what's happening there.
So the House is expected to pass the budget for the military. It's called the NDAA, and it is a whopping $761 billion with a B dollars. Now, Andy Biggs, the congressman from Arizona, he is the head of the Freedom Caucus, which was started in 2015, and essentially
Very
they are
conservatarian, small government.
Exactly. They were the, I guess you could say, official answer to the Tea Party movement that started as Obama was president. So he came out and essentially said that Trump, who is threatening to veto the bill for various reasons, one of which is he doesn't like that there is a commission being created underneath the budget that would change military installations, change their names for politically correct reasons.
The Confederacy thing,
Yeah.
changing
Yes.
the
Yeah.
names of installations named for Confederate
Yes,
generals.
exactly.
and heroes.
Exactly. As well as he is also calling for the how do I say this? Dissolution of, I guess,
I was
of
hoping it would be
the
disembowelment.
Yeah.
Keep going.
the
Dissolution's fine, too.
of Section 230, which, as most of our audience knows, is the infamous directive that allows big tech to essentially censor conservatives at their own discretion. And Andy Biggs has come out and supported him on this. He has said that they would support the president's veto. And Kevin McCarthy also came out and said that they would not be overriding the veto, which is something the House can do with 2/3 majority. And Kevin McCarthy said, if the president vetoes the bill, the budget, then that's it. We got to go back to the drawing board and come up with a new budget. So the couple questions that I had for you guys is, so what do you guys think this means for the future of the House GOP, specifically going into 2022, looking to the future when the GOP is looking to take back the House, as well as what do you think the GOP in both the House and the Senate are going to do in order to get rid of Section 230 going forward?
Well, I think a week or two ago, we were talking about how we're afraid that the Republican Party, in absence of Trump, is going to kind of lose its voice and not really have any strong positioning when opposed to the left, which has always been great with narratives. And
So it'll go back to the pre-Trump Republican Party.
In other
Basically,
words,
the
Mitt
same
Romney's,
thing it's been since basically Ronald Reagan.
Yes. But Biggs taking a stand like this, we're seeing other Republicans making similar stands against various overexpensive bills and legislation from the left. And I think this is a good sign that they're being more vocal. They're standing up for their beliefs. So then going into 2022, if we win more seats for the Republican Party, they might actually do something instead of just kind of having the power and just sitting and not doing anything as we're used to.
Yeah. So is Biggs going after this based on the size of the budget as well as the Confederacy issue, the base renaming stuff, or is this just purely on principle?
It's a combination of things.
On principle as far as naming goes. That's what I was trying to ask. It's a combination. You said.
It's a combination. So the argument from the Freedom Caucus, as you said, they're conservatarian, so they prefer smaller government. They're looking for, smaller budgets, less taxes, all that good stuff. And he's arguing that the bill is basically just a pork bill. He's saying that there's just so much progressive / leftist crap
agenda
in there
items.
agenda items, that it totally undercuts the true meaning of the bill, which is to fund the military. And the Democrats just stuffed a bunch of things in there, some of which we don't even know what it is yet because we haven't gone through the whole bill yet. But I mean, this could spell...
Jonah, they're going to have to pass it so we can read it.
Yeah.
Okay, Madam Speaker.
Naive interns here, not knowing how Washington works. You've got to pass the bill so that you can find out what's in it.
Another problem Biggs had with it is that it puts limits on troop withdrawals as Trump is trying to draw more troops out.
That's a big thing.
So this actually obligates us to keep more troops in the field. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes.
That's an interesting move from Congress.
Yeah.
So where do we think this is going to go? Do we think that the bill is going to go down in flames?
I think it's going to depend. I think with McCarthy coming out and saying they would not overturn a Trump veto, I think that indicates to Trump that the House Republicans are going to follow his lead.
Yep.
So I think it essentially comes down to what Trump is going to do. If he decides to stand his ground and say, no, I want Section 230 repealed. I do not want this renaming commission. I want more money going towards the military, not progressive.
And he's not going to waver.
Agenda. Why is 230 even in the midst of this?
I think it's something that Trump brought up.
It is.
As he wants it to get thrown in there.
Okay, so both sides are piling stuff in that's not really related to the military. And 230, we should say to the audience, even conservatives are divided on 230. There's a really good argument that 230 has allowed the internet to grow and spread freely, and has actually created what was a bastion of free speech and the free exchange of ideas. Now these tech titans have come in. Some people call them the masters of the universe. Have come in, and they're using fact checks, supposed fact checks, faux fact checks, and these sorts of things, and shutting down conversation. I think we talked about it on the show yesterday. YouTube has now said if you that they will basically sanitize. They will nuke anything that says that Biden did not win because of fraud, that fraud or something resulted in Biden actually losing. So I can see why they want to get. Some people want to get rid of 230 because then it would allow for some amount of regulation.
Right.
It's also conservatives tend to be against regulation. We tend to think that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
So, and then this week we've also got lawsuits launched from 47 states, something like that, against Facebook trying to deal with the monopoly issue there. So we were talking a little bit about 230 ahead of time, and I was saying I'm not as strong on it as a lot of people are. You were saying you tell us what your take on it is, Michael.
Yeah. Well, it protects publishers from being held accountable for what third-party content users put on their sites.
If somebody, if we have comments turned on on the Western Journal, some of you guys comment on there, and we appreciate your comments. But 230 basically keeps us from getting prosecuted if somebody makes some sort of a terroristic threat,
among
or something
other
like
things.
that.
And platforms, when they post, like YouTube with all their videos and stuff, they're not held accountable if some of that content is not up to code. But there's utility in that, and publishers should have the right to do what they want with their content and to regulate it how they see fit. I don't think we should get into that, but when it comes to them violating their own rules and treating people unfairly based on, against those rules, I think there are some avenues in which maybe 230, maybe it shouldn't be repealed, but definitely maybe the language should be changed a little bit to be a little more clear.
Yeah.
So
what do you think about that, John?
I would agree with that. I'm a firm proponent for the First Amendment and for all of the freedoms that we enjoy here in this country. And I would agree. I think it needs to be more specific. I think with the way that it's written now, it gives the big tech companies the ability to forego their own rules, to go against what they claim they're using 230 for, in order to promote their own political agenda, whether that's conservative or liberal, which it obviously tends to be more liberal. Josh Hawley, actually, in the Senate from, I believe it's Missouri, he's a big proponent for either repealing or changing 230. And many see him as one of the future stars of the Republican Party. So it'll be interesting to see where the party goes listening to leaders like that.
And to be clear, if Twitter or Facebook wants to make their platform a pro-Democrat, just openly do that. They should be able to do it.
Yeah.
But I think the problem that a lot of conservatives like myself have is that they seem to be manipulating and lying about it.
Yeah.
And that's not right. Yeah.
Right. You can't say you're not a publisher. You can't say I've got my hands off of everything that's happening on my platform and then put your thumb on the scale in the form of fact checkers and shadow banning and the sorts of things that we're starting to see now. So the idea of maybe revisiting 230, reconsidering it in light of what's happening. This is it's a very hard thing. We've not run into this before. The analogy I use all the time for the issue of social media is that basically it is the marketplace of ideas now. It is the town forum. It's the town square. I think what they're doing is akin to basically somebody back in the 18th century, one company cornering the market on paper and another company cornering the market on ink. And that doesn't technically suspend free speech, but it makes it so unreasonably difficult to guarantee free speech for people that that it is a danger to free speech.
Right.
So, okay, that's good stuff. Going from talk about the military budget to talk about a military hero who's now in Congress and what he's up to. We've got Michael talking about Dan Crenshaw. What do we have with Dan?
So the House has been deliberating over this second stimulus package for months and months.
Yeah, almost $1 trillion, 900 and something billion right now.
Yes. And one of the reasons it's taking so long for this to come out is House Democrats have just been refusing to concede on any grounds. They want all of their biggest progressive agenda items in there, just like they did the previous bill we talked about.
So they're trying to hold people hostage.
Yeah. And then Nancy Pelosi, the way Dan Crenshaw describes it, said the quiet part out loud last week. When she basically acknowledged that, now that we know that Biden's going to be president, now we're willing to negotiate a little bit. So essentially what she said with her comments is that she was willing to hold the American public hostage just as long as it helped, because she didn't want a bill to go through and then Trump to take credit for it. So as long as it helped their agenda, the Democratic agenda, to not have the bill go forward, that's what she wanted to do. Whether that meant, harming very small businesses and people that need help right now. So Dan Crenshaw, he condemned Pelosi's actions during a speech, and we're going to show you that video right now.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to unequivocally condemn in the strongest possible terms the actions of the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Just last week, referring to her obstruction of bipartisan targeted relief bills that we could have voted on this floor, she said, quote, "Don't characterize what we did before as a mistake. This was not a mistake, it was a decision," end quote. When asked what had changed, why she is finally coming to the table on COVID relief, her response was simple: a new president. We've known for months that Speaker Pelosi was holding the American people hostage for political gain. I've said it, my colleagues have said it. While Americans suffered under unscientific, foolish lockdowns, Pelosi withheld relief for political purposes. Not policy purposes, but political purposes. But we now have a full admission. She said the quiet part out loud. This was never about what was best for the American people, never about honest policy disagreement. It was about preventing President Trump from getting any credit. It was about politics.
Truly brilliant oratory there from Dan Crenshaw.
Yeah.
Yes.
I hope you could hear that, because we couldn't just then.
But
So I trust, though, that it was brilliant and pray that you could hear it.
So Crenshaw called out Pelosi for basically holding the American people hostage over this, for putting the political agenda above what's best for the American people. He called out the fact that her and other California politicians are putting forward these unscientific lockdowns and just destroying people's lives at the very same time. And two different things stood out to me about this. And the first one being that it seems like Democrats, at this point, they care way more about amassing more government power than they do about actually negotiating and
At this point,
finding ways.
At this
to help.
point, for decades. Yes. That's their natural. Yeah, that's their MO. They are not there to help. They are there to amass power, and that's an old Marxist truism. It is about power.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get into. Is it seems like this is kind of at the philosophical core of what the left is all about. It's about the ends justifying the means. Like, amassing more political power for the government gives them the power to save everyone's lives because they know what's best for the rest of us. Mm-hmm. And do you have any thoughts about that kind of philosophy and hypocrisy, Jonah?
One, it's infuriating, and I think I can probably speak for most of our viewers and listeners. It's infuriating, and it's maddening. And I would offer a ray of hope, however. This last election, I would say that played a huge part in the reason why the GOP picked up a lot of House seats they were not supposed to pick up.
Yes.
In this last election, I mean, to the point where Kevin McCarthy is trolling the House Democrats who are no longer in power. But I would 100% agree with you there. The thing that we've seen from Democrats for decades, Josh, as you said, is they look for every opportunity they can to take power away from the individual, whether that is county, whether that is person to person, whether that is the states. They take as much power as they can grab and they bring it to the federal level. And again, you're seeing that in the lockdowns as well. You're seeing that with Governor Cuomo, Governor Newsom releasing these blatantly anti-scientific lockdowns that are not shown to stop anything.
That was a big part of what Crenshaw was going off about, was the lockdowns. They obviously don't believe in them because they're not even following their own rules. We've covered so many stories on WJ Live about Democratic politicians breaking their own COVID rules. It's
good for thee, but not for me.
Well, not even.
And we're back in this. I can't remember who I was reading yesterday, but we're back in this situation that we were in right after 9/11, where you can go back and look at footage from pundits in the weeks and a few months after 9/11 saying, "Hey, I wonder when things are going to get back to normal in the airports."
Yeah.
And here, 20 years later. 19 years later, we're still taking off our freaking shoes every time we go through. The government does not give up power once it gets it. Democrats don't give up power once they get it. You were about to say something.
I was just going to say that, and it's not even the Democrat officials. And for me, this has been particularly demoralizing is you see the medical experts, the ones that we are supposed to look to for the answers during this crisis, during this virus, and they're not following what they're ordering politicians to do.
Yeah, that's true.
And
and that's confused as well. I have a dear friend. He's actually one of our, he's a medical editor for us. And Facebook walloped him for expressing a medical opinion on masks on Facebook. And they came after him on that. They censored him. Oh, I think it was Facebook. It may have been Twitter. 99% sure it was Facebook. If you post the wrong CDC study, there are CDC studies talking about the inefficacy of masks. Now, maybe those studies are right. Maybe they're wrong. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. But I do know when you post the wrong thing, you can get in trouble over it.
And one of the most important parts of the scientific process is like having a discussion. Inviting dissenting opinions to the table. Like that's how we learn and progress.
You're supposed to beat the living tar out of the idea. And if it can survive it, if it can survive 100 academics reviewing it, then maybe it's got a leg to stand on. And that doesn't seem to be what we're doing right now. I wanted to say something super quickly about your metaphor of a hostage situation. It's really funny you said that. I was talking with a good friend last night, and she was saying, look, I still think Trump is going to pull this out. I said, okay, well, that's interesting. Tell me about that, because nobody in the mainstream is saying that. Nobody at all. But she said, well, very smart, much smarter than I am. I said, look, tell me about that. And so she told me and stuff. And I looked at her and I said, what in the world happens to the country if that happens?
Right.
If this flips somehow, he ends up pulling it out.
Right.
And ends up staying, what happens? And I said to her, gosh, I'm concerned about what will happen to the country. Look, if Biden gets inaugurated, we're not going to go out there and burn down downtown. We're not going to burn down our neighborhoods. We're not going to burn down somebody else's neighborhoods.
Yeah.
If Trump ends up somehow pulling this out and getting inaugurated,
it would be
it will be chaos. And she looked at me and she said, Josh, you're acting like you're a hostage. It's like it's a hostage situation. If they are banking on this idea that if one group doesn't do what they want that group to do, which is allow Biden, just roll over and allow Biden to have the White House, then it's game over. They're gonna burn things up. They're gonna come in and wreck up the place.
Well, in the days leading up to the election, you had so many small businesses in big cities boarding up their businesses and saying, "Oh, hey, it's a black-owned business."
Black owned,
Those are
minority
hostages.
owned. One of my favorite pictures in all of that was these two black guys who were presumably outside their business. They had AR-15s slung over their shoulders, and they were like, they are there to defend their business. And I loved it. I pushed it out on Facebook. Amazingly, it didn't get censored. It's like, this is good. This is what we want to see. Okay, so talking about this, we come to the most important part of the show, which is my segment. And that, by the way, that's a standing rule. Anytime you tune in, you can let the eyes glaze over. It's fine until you get to my segment. Then it's time to tune in. That's where it gets real. So anyway, this is why I watched the segment just completely bomb. All right, so we are getting down to the deadline. Depending on who you ask, we are past the deadline. We're past the deadline for certification. The mainstream media, the establishment media, celebrity culture, they all think this is a slam dunk for Biden. YouTube has said, hey, if you talk about Biden having won by because of fraud, then you're out. We're nuking your video. They really think they've got this in the bag. But now Texas, of all places, Texas has thrown a monkey wrench into everything. They have filed suit against 4 states, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. They did that Monday. You've probably been paying some amount of attention to this. What I found happening, though, was I was seeing more media just about the case being filed than about what the case actually was, what's actually happening there. So I want to take us through that case quickly,
right.
and I've got to read a couple things, so bear with us here. But then I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. I started the day really thinking the same way I've been thinking for a while. I hate to say it, but just sort of out of despair, thinking, I don't know if we're going to pull this thing out. After reading up on the case, I really think there's a decent chance for Trump.
Really?
Yeah, I really do think there's a decent chance for Trump. I'm going to explain it. And First off, we got to give credit here. Margot Cleveland over at The Federalist wrote the piece that I'm about to pull from. She spent 25 years as an appellate court clerk. She knows what she's talking about. Mm-hmm. She breaks down what's happening with the Texas suit, what the claims are, and why it's significant. So allow me to read just a couple of things here. First off, don't get the idea this is Bush v. Gore. We all remember hanging chads. We all remember what happened in 2000. This is not Bush v. Gore. This is not two people taking each other to court. This is Texas asking permission from the Supreme Court to drag 4 other states to court for some very specific reasons. Texas is not alleging widespread voter fraud. They're not alleging that voter fraud itself took place. And I think Texas, in doing that, has figured out something that we should have figured out from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And the reason, folks, don't get mad at me. The reason I said earlier, I've been kind of in this depressed mode where I'm thinking, I'm afraid Biden is going to take this thing, is because we've tried and tried through the courts with the voter fraud stuff, and none of it's sticking.
Yes.
None of it's sticking.
Yes.
Now, look, you can say, I hear you out there, and you're saying, oh, but there was so much voter fraud and this and that and the other. And there may well have been. I don't know. I'm not a judge. I'm not hearing the cases. I've read some of the suits. I've read some of the affidavits.
Right.
What we should not have done was go after the fraud element. What we should have done is do what Texas is doing and go after the element that says, look, these states were changing the rules on how elections were conducted, and they were doing it without going through state legislatures. The United States Constitution vests state legislatures and them alone with determining how elections are held. So what Texas is doing is they are going to the Supreme Court, and they are trying to get a court order dealing with Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, and basically trying to prevent them from certifying their presidential electors. Now, I'm not going to go down. I think I can't remember how many pages the suit was. Maybe I feel like it was 97 or something. I'm not going to read 97 pages to you. I'm going to pull out 3 quick excerpts from Cleveland's piece. First off, what Texas points out, several large Wisconsin counties, and by the way, I'll point that out in a minute. Several large Wisconsin counties use drop boxes in direct violation of Wisconsin election code. They also ignore the statutory certification requirements for absentee ballots, counting the votes that the state legislature defined as illegal because they did not include a witness signature and address. Michigan, similarly, violated the statutory mandates established by the state legislature, with the Secretary of State mass mailing absentee ballots in contravention of state law. They also ignored the state signature verification requirement. Georgia also violated the signature verification requirement in that state, according to Texas complaint. Finally, Pennsylvania, where it was most egregious, as claimed by the Texas brief.
Right.
In Pennsylvania, election officials ignored the statutory bar on inspecting ballots before Election Day, then illegally provided voter information to third parties and allowed illegal curing of the ballots. Significantly, in Pennsylvania, these illegal practices only occurred in Democratic strongholds, with Republicans instead following the law. Again, that's according to the Texas brief with the Supreme Court as recounted by Cleveland over at the Federalist. So what Texas has done is they've gone in and they've said, forget this idea of discrete fraud. Forget the idea of dominion and these things. Look, here's the deal. The legislatures are the ones who are supposed to make the rules, and all of a sudden,
right,
you've got these executive branch officers who they just took it upon themselves to change the rules. And the thing I was going to point out, by the way, in 3 out of the 4 cases in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, they all have Democrat governors. Mm-hmm. Now, their state legislatures, Senates and Houses, controlled by Republicans, every one of them. But instead of going through the Republican legislatures, they just decided through executive fiat that they were going to change the rules. Now land wherever you want on voter fraud. I don't care where you land on that.
Yes.
Forget that. Say there wasn't an ounce of fraud. Say there wasn't any fraud at all. The executives in states don't just get to contravene the Constitution of the United States. Now, here's what happens. So I'm sorry I'm filibustering this, but I want to give you a quick rundown on what.
Good stuff.
So,
It is good stuff.
Texas is not trying to have the election handed to Trump. They're not interested in that. Again, This is not Bush v. Gore. Mm-hmm. Texas is trying to keep these states from certifying their electors and then forcing these state legislatures to pick the electors.
Yep.
Now, this is very significant for a couple of reasons. First off, the Supreme Court does not want to have anything to do with this. Nobody on that court wants to be one of the ones responsible for. I mean, God, history always starts when you're born. There may have been a more contentious election, which is Andrew Johnson, maybe.
Yeah.
But gosh, it's hard to think there are more than one or two out there. No Supreme Court justice wants to be in that position, have his name attached to that.
No.
So they have every incentive to send it back to the states, which is exactly what Texas wants. They want this going back to the states. They want it going to the state legislatures. Those state legislators, the Republicans there are scared for their lives.
Literally.
Well, yeah, and God forgive us for the people who have made them literally scared. But what's her name? Cynthia, what was her name? Jackson. What's that? I can't remember her name anyway. Yeah, but anyway, these guys know, these state legislators know it's all on the line. If they drop the ball here, their constituents are going to remember it in 2 years, and they are going to be out of a job. And 201, the state legislatures in these states are controlled by Republicans. Now, the other thing that those state legislators can do, if they don't have the guts to actually select a slate of electors for Trump, they can just decide we're not going to send electors.
Yep.
Screw it all. It's beyond repair. There's nothing we can do about it. We're just not going to send electors. Now, what that does, I did math earlier.
This is where things get interesting.
What that does, you've basically got 62 electoral votes at stake here with Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. What that does, if they all decided, screw it, we're not sending electors, Biden goes from 306 electoral votes down to 244. That is not enough. He needs 270. If any two of those states decide, all right, we're going to send a Trump slate of electors, and the others don't send anybody, Trump instantly wins. If Trump only gets one of those states, if nobody gets to 270, then we're back in the scenario we talked about for a while ahead of time. This goes back to the United States House. But the United States House, even though it's controlled by Democrats, the vote is based on state delegations.
This is the best part, yeah.
Republicans control most of the state delegations by 26 to 24 or 23, depending on how screwed up Pennsylvania is when if you're thinking about before the election or after. Anyway, those are real, tangible ways that Trump could pull this out. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not even saying it's likely to happen. I think it is a lot more likely to happen than I thought it was before Texas filed. And I think Texas was brilliant. We're about to go over time, and I filibustered here, but I want to get a couple quick comments from you guys. Just tell me, let's do Jonah first, then Michael. Jonah, tell me what you think about this. Just ideas.
I think it's incredible. I mean, I've been in the boat of I don't think Trump is gonna pull this out. It's
almost hopeless. That's what it's felt like.
Right.
It's almost hopeless. We've tried to hold out hope for you guys. We've wanted to look at the bright side, but it has felt hopeless.
Exactly. And that's not a fun place to be.
Yeah, it's horrible.
It's a hard place to be in. It does offer.
I'm running out of Lexapro. It's horrible. Yeah, keep going.
It's encouraging though. It is really encouraging to see, and not necessarily just because we want Trump in the White House for 4 more years. I think that's pretty clear. It's encouraging to see because you would hope that the people we elect into office, that we vote for to represent us, you would hope they would try to follow the Constitution.
Yeah.
And that clearly, at least in regards to these states that have not allowed, for the legislatures to do their job.
Yeah.
I mean, it gives you hope, I guess.
And this is not, I can only speak for me, but this doesn't excite me because I think my guy's going to win. That would be neat. The most exciting part about this, I hope for me, is that it looks like the Constitution really may prevail here.
Yes.
And absolutely. It reminds me how brilliant the founders were. Because the president is actually the president of the states. He's not really the president of the people. That's why he's not directly elected by the people. He's the president of the states. And that's what Texas is saying here is, like, look, we're a state. We're entitled to a vote here. And by the way, we've got 2 senators just like everybody else does. Turns out the vice president we know the vice president is the president of the Senate and cast the tie-breaking vote. Turns out that tie-breaking vote may be used a whole lot in the days to come because the Senate's so close. And Texas is saying, look, if you guys get away with this, you're disenfranchising us. You're disenfranchising our senators. But I think this is potentially an enormous victory for the Constitution.
Yes.
And I hope if the roles were reversed, I mean, it would be a bitter pill if the roles were reversed and it were Biden that was depending on the Constitution being followed to the letter. But I hope I would want that.
Yeah.
It's brilliant the way they've set it up. And Texas saw it, and we should have seen this from the beginning. Instead of going after all of the voter fraud allegations that have been so difficult to prove, we should have been going after that. We should have just gone back to that.
Since the beginning of all of these widespread voter fraud allegations. I've been really just pessimistic about the whole thing, and I've just from the beginning I've seen certain things that like people didn't pick up on for a very long time. Like for instance, the vote drop in the middle of the night. That sure looks shady, but if you really understand what's going on, that's not actually super unusual. And just things like that, people kept saying, oh, yeah, widespread voter fraud. There was never huge evidence of it. But along the way, there were lots of pieces of evidence about a lot of the things that this suit details.
Yes.
And finally seeing them all put together, it's really nice. And it does give me a lot of hope. And, man, if things went to the House and it ended up that, the Constitution and federalism won out in the end, I would be laughing.
What a
so hard. That would be
sweet
such a
victory. And to be honest, I mean, what the left will do in response to that will be terrible. But it it might be one of the sweetest ways to actually win an election.
Yes.
Where the Constitution has been followed to the letter, and it changes absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I think you're right. The part of the difficulty with voter fraud, and I'm curious if you guys feel like this too. You can talk, maybe mention it in the comments if you want to. We'd like to hear what you're thinking. Mm-hmm. The challenge I've had with the voter fraud allegations is that for every allegation, there is a counter allegation.
Yep.
And I don't have access to a Dominion voting machine to take it apart. Mm-hmm. I don't have video. Now, I've got little snippets of video that go viral showing what look like suitcases or this or that, but I don't have the whole video. I don't know the people who were there. I don't know all of this stuff. What I do know is the Constitution, and what is very easy to figure out is the Constitution and what the state legislature said about how elections were to be carried out. That is easy to define. It is in black and white. There's no opinion on it whatsoever. It's does it exist or does it not exist? Did the state legislature say this is how elections are to be carried out, or did it not say that? Right. And did you comply with it? Mm-hmm. That is very easy to figure out. And again, it will be the sweetest thing in the world, I think, if Trump actually pulls this out, thanks to the incredibly prescient, perspicacious nuances that the founders had when they built the Constitution. It's an incredible thought. Now, having said all of that, just for you Facebook people, for you YouTube people who are listening, and any of you Facebook people too, to be clear, I did not say Joe Biden won by voter fraud. I did not. I don't concede that he's won yet. We'll see. It'll be interesting. I don't concede that anybody's won yet. But what is interesting here is what Texas is doing, what the Supreme Court is motivated to do here, which is kick it back to the states, and then what the state legislators are motivated to do, which is keep their seats.
And this suit has a lot more legs than anything we've seen.
Way more. And I would be very curious. I'd love to talk to the Texas AG and see how long they've been planning this. I've got some personal friends who are actually our attorneys are me and my wife. They my wife and I have to have attorneys to talk to each other. We're happily married. But they've represented us in a couple of things. They're actually helping the president's team. And I want to talk with them and say, hey, look, when did we just wait until the 11th hour because we wanted to exhaust everything else? Why did we not do this earlier? And I'm afraid the answer is we didn't think about it. We didn't actually read things the way we should have read them. But it makes again, I'm sorry to filibuster. I'm just so excited about this. Mm-hmm. This is what we were talking about weeks ahead of the election. Not that they were gonna come in and truck ballots in the night.
Yes.
I don't think I ever predicted that.
No, that was
what
always
we were worried about was mailing out millions of absentee ballots. What we were worried about was not checking signatures. What we were worried about was executives, bureaucrats deciding how elections were going to be conducted. Mm-hmm. And then we foolishly got caught up in the craziness afterwards.
A lot of conspiracy theories.
There were a lot of conspiracy theories.
And they drowned out a lot of the real problems.
They did, which is exactly what the left wants to happen. Yes. By the way, that's why they talk about QAnon so much. They don't actually think QAnon is that bad a thing. They want to talk about it more and more because they want to stick Republicans in that box.
They've given it all the influence.
And they have, and ironically, it gains more influence the more they talk about it.
Yes.
But anyway, that's an aside. So, folks, I hope you leave the podcast today. I hope you leave WJ Live today a little more encouraged than when you started. Maybe I'm more encouraged than when I started. Mm-hmm. It's going to be very interesting to see what happened. The deadline just passed within the last hour or two for those states to respond to Texas brief that they filed with the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court asked for them to move in an expedited fashion since the clock is really ticking. We'll be following it over at the westernjournal.com, and we'll be looking at what's happening there and reporting on it as we learn more. Anyway, folks, be encouraged. And hey, listen, at the end of the day, we don't serve a president. We don't serve a Congress. We serve a king. We didn't vote him in. We can't vote him out. King Jesus. Amen. As my old pastor Adrian Rogers used to say, where God doesn't rule, he overrules. Listen, no fear. I think it was Corey Ten Boom maybe who said there's no panic in heaven, only plans. Do not panic over any of this. If Biden ends up winning, if Biden ends up in office, it is not the end of the world. God prevails, and he has got a plan for us. So be encouraged in that, too. Thank you so much for joining us. A couple of housekeeping things just that I tend to forget to say. First off, remember, we are here Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. 5 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah.
George did it to me. Freaking George. I had this perfectly, and I sit in George's seat and get cursed. 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, Monday through Friday. And as you know, the hosts rotate. And if you're lucky, I'll be back again before the week's out. I don't know if you'll get these guys again or not. Who knows? Also, we need your support. Thank you so much for watching. If all you can do is watch, wonderful. Keep watching. If you don't feel inclined to support us in any way other than watching, no problem. Thank you for watching. If you do feel inclined to support, you can go to westernjournal.com/join. westernjournal.com/join. You can subscribe there. We've got it up on the screen right now. You can subscribe there and actually support our reporting. It is hard to do what we do. It is expensive to do what we do. And Facebook has destroyed, absolutely destroyed over the last 4 years, new media like we are. They have destroyed our revenue streams. So if you feel compelled, if you feel prompted, we'd love your help. But hey, just watching is enough. Please watch us, share us, like us. Be sure to watch us on YouTube. You go to youtube.com/WJ Live. While you're there, click the subscribe button. After the subscribe button, you'll have the option to click a little bell. That bell will make sure you get notified every time we go live. So subscribe to us there. Click the bell so you know when we go live. And folks, that's it. We're going to hopefully know a little bit more tomorrow, and we'll round out the week maybe on some really good news.
We'll see.
So tune in tomorrow. We appreciate you, and we will see you later. Thanks for watching WJ Live. Hey guys, huge story. We need a fresh card. Let's red label it. Roll as fast as we can.
All right, on it. Sounds good. All right, guys, we got a red label breaking story. Can we get a picture for that? And can we try to get that out in the next 20 minutes? I want eyes on it as soon as possible.
On it, Joe. 2 more minutes and we'll be live.
Sam, we're going to need a slot for that story, so figure out what you want to bump. Ashley, we're going to want to translate it into Spanish yesterday.
Sí, señor. We can slide it in at 2:30. It should be going out here in about 10 minutes.